It is December 20th, 1987. The ferry Doña Paz leaves Tacloban with over 4,000 passengers and a manifest that lists 1,500. The Doña Paz was a 305-foot Philippine ferry built in Japan in 1963 and operated by Sulpicio Lines on the Tacloban to Manila route. At 6:30 in the morning of December 20th, 1987, she pulled out of Tacloban for the long passage home for Christmas. Her official manifest listed around 1,500 passengers and 66 crew, the legal capacity of the vessel. The actual number aboard was at least 4,000. Sulpicio Lines had sold uncounted standing room tickets to families desperate to be home before the holiday. But the ferry was not the real danger. Crossing her path in the Tabla Strait that night was the MT Vector, a Philippine oil tanker carrying 8 days 800 barrels of gasoline and petroleum products for Caltex, bound from Batat to Masbate. Investigators later established that the Vector was unseaworthy, had no licensed master, no functioning lookout, and no proper certificate. Aboard the Doña Paz, the situation was no better. Captain Eusebio Nazareno was watching a film on the Betamax machine in his cabin. Officers on the bridge were drinking beer and listening to music in the crew quarters. One survivor heard laughter. The deck watch had been left to a single apprentice. The weather was clear, the sea was choppy, and most of the 4,000 passengers were asleep. At about 10:30 in the evening, off Dumali Point near the island of Marinduque, the Doña Paz drove into the Vector amidships. The tanker's cargo ignited on impact. Survivors described an explosion, then the sea itself catching fire. Burning gasoline spread across the surface of the strait around both ships in a sheet of flame. The lights on the Doña Paz failed within minutes. There were no orders, no muster, no lifeboat drill. The lockers holding the life jackets were padlocked, and no crew member produced a key. Passengers climbed over the rails and jumped into water that was already burning. Some clung to suitcases for buoyancy. Some were taken by sharks in the strait. The Doña Paz went under within 2 hours of the impact. The Vector burned and sank within 4. The first ship to reach the scene was the freighter Don Claudio, which threw a net to the survivors after spotting the fire from miles away. 26 people were pulled from the water, 24 passengers from the Doña Paz and 2 crewmen from the Vector. None of the Doña Paz's officers survived. It would be 16 hours before Philippine maritime authorities mounted a real search and rescue. The official death toll, including the unticketed passengers Sulpicio Lines had refused to count, was set at about 4,385. The Marine Board of Inquiry assigned formal blame to the Vector. The owners of the Doña Paz paid compensation in cases that dragged on for decades. No one was sent to prison. The Christmas ferry sank in roughly 500 meters of water in the Tabla Strait. Most of the bodies were never recovered. Most of the dead had never been recorded as having boarded at all.